This is the Sexual 7 panel. Welcome to the Art of Growth and the last week of our subtypes series, where we have been going through all 27 subtypes in the Enneagram, 3 subtypes per type, and we are concluding this season with a live instincts event. We're going to do question and answer. We're going to share some key learnings, and it is going to be phenomenal. So please join us live. You can get tickets at our website, www.theartofgrowth.org, or look for the link in the newsletter going out this week. Several of the panelists from this season will be there as well, and we want to do our best to help you take your next step in this world, because we have seen how much growth can happen through the instincts. Really excited for you all to hear from Suzanne York, who's going to share about the impact the instincts have had on her. And I'm excited that you all are going to hear about it, because hearing about it has just been such an incredible gift to us. If you haven't taken our free instincts test, you can do that now at www.theartofgrowth.org. You can also take our free Enneagram test there. We even have a youth Enneagram test on there now. And you can go there to find out about all of our work with organizations, training in emotional intelligence and the Enneagram. And you can even set up one-on-one coaching appointments there as well, or a discovery session, which includes a typing interview and some coaching introduction. So we look forward to hearing from you and assisting your growth journey however we can. But for now, my friends, let's jump in with our Sexual 7 panel.
All right, well, welcome everyone to the Sexual 7 panel. While there is a similar core motivation to the type, the way the type expresses itself is so different from instinct to instinct. And that's what we hope all of you catch, is how different it is. And so today we're looking at the 7 and the sexual instinct and how they match up, what happens when those two converge. And so first of all, I just want to begin by welcoming you and having you just introduce yourself, tell us your name and where you're from.
And yes, since Joel is a Sexual 7, we'll be hearing a bit more from him. So we actually have 4 Sexual 7s on the panel today that we're going to be hearing from. And this is, again, we get to do this so we can see through someone else's lens, see how they see the world. And these instincts provide such an amazing nuance on top of the type. The aspects of it that double down on the type and the aspects of it that expand or go against the type, and gives it a lot more of a nuanced elaboration. And so we're jumping into that today. So from each of our panels, just introduce yourself, your name and where you're from.
My name is Erin. I'm 33. I'm from Fort Lauderdale. I'm a mom of 2 littles currently, an almost 5-year-old and a 2-year-old.
My name is Christian. I am from Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm 24. I'm a music instructor for little kids and a musician.
Hi, I'm Peggy. I'm an instructor coach for a local university. I teach social work, and I live in West Sacramento and Lake Elsinore, California.
All right, fantastic. Well, welcome to each of you. As we begin, I'm just going to define real quick, as I've done for each type, what the core motivation is for the 7. And we used a bunch of words because there's difficult to get specifically what that energy is that is seeking to get satisfied, to avoid something. So we say 7s tend to avoid pain and pursuit of pleasure. They tend to avoid things that are difficult or that are boring or that feel like it's depriving or feel trapped by something. And instead we lean forward towards the future, towards our imagination. And that's tends to be the drive of the 7. So with that, pair that up and tell me how that interacts with the sexual energy. And the first aspect that we'll look at is the ability to take risks, sometimes called evolutionary energy. It's that need to change, to bring about something new. So talk to me about how that interacts with your need to avoid pain and in pursuit of pleasure.
I drank. My mind was so full constantly of thoughts. Like my mind would never turn off. I couldn't imagine I'm a social worker. I couldn't imagine having a job that was like inside an office. Like I have to be moving, constantly moving. My day has to be completely different every day. And so at the very end, like close to the end of my career, my actual direct service career, now I'm teaching, but I never shut off. I would come home and drink wine so that I could shut that off. I think that's the biggest thing for me.
And you were shutting off, you said you're shutting off your mind, but can you say more about what was going through your mind? Because different types will shut off their minds for different reasons. What was happening for you? What were you thinking about? Was it chasing something new, something different? Was it a new idea? What was going on for you?
Yeah, I mean, again, if you work for government systems, you have an idea what social work is really about, which your basic core would be to make kids safer, right? But you're working up against a system that absolutely sucks. So that cognitive dissonance between how I wanted to be as a worker and how things were and the barriers I came up against, they just built up. Mm-hmm. And I just needed a release to get away from that.
Yeah.
You articulated well the 7 in that, the need to be interested to avoid some of that pain. How do you see that overlapping with the evolutionary energy, the risk, the ability to push the envelope, to take risk in order to break boundaries?
I think the more I drank, the more risk I took. I mean, I really believe, like I was getting in a car and driving. I was coming to work, not feeling really well in the morning and taking a risk that I wasn't the best person that I could be. If you're talking about risks like looking over the Grand Canyon, that's not the kind of risk I'm looking at. The risk was I was risking my relationships with my family, my husband, my daughter, my grandkids. And I kept pushing that risk because I knew there was going to be a time where someone was going to say, you can't have me and that too. I knew it was going to happen. And I just kept pushing it. I kept pushing the boundaries until I made somebody finally say, Mom, that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah. The risk there I hear is in when there's so much pain. For the 7, there's a way of managing that pain that tends to pursue, pleasure, numb the pain, go after the pleasure. And if you have the instinct of the ability to take risks, it just seems to push that in full throttle. Like you are now doing everything you can to avoid pain, risking a whole lot. So risk gets amplified in a negative way. There's the high side to that, which I'd like to hear about as well, is in what ways do you produce change that's really good, that brings about something better. But yeah, totally understand and relate, by the way. That's also very much my story of having been in situations where the pain was so bad that I kept pushing against everything and wanting change like compulsively as a way to avoid the pain in order to just and it wasn't even like I was finding pleasure in that. It was just like I'm avoiding pain like as much as I can.
Because the next thing will have less pain in it?
At my worst, I couldn't even think about the next thing being less painful. It was
interesting.
It was like, get out of this situation in any way you can, not to feel this pain. When I would take a break to think, my mind would go to a better future, better, like if I can just get through this, if I can just get through this. So always saying that, if I can just get through this, then. And it was this idea, everything was postponed to the future in the pursuit of, so yeah.
Yeah. Erin, you were nodding your head for some of that.
Yeah, no, I could relate how it shows up for me. I would say I cannot be stagnant. I could never be that way. And I think I am also sober. So drinking for me allowed me to be stagnant a lot. But originally when I had to get sober, it was a necessity. So I got sober at 22 and I just up and left my life. Like I lived I'm from Massachusetts, but I just realized I can't be here anymore. If things are going to change, it all has to change. And I took a big risk and I moved to Florida. It was like, everyone was like, what is she doing? But it was what saved me. In a way, it just made me able to do it by myself. I think I could easily fall back. I'm one of 5, the baby of 5. So I was enabled, but just taken care of. My parents were fixers, and that's not a bad thing. They loved me so much. They wanted to fix everything, but I needed to do it, and I had to take that risk of just moving and doing it myself.
There may be a running theme with sexual sevens and some sort of substance issues because oh my gosh, I'm so like that too. And I think, me and my friends growing up, going to Catholic school and going to church every Sunday, I think we kind of looked at each other and we were just like, how much can we get away with? And then as life piles on more and more, you just try to get away with more and more. And then it goes from, one thing to the next, and it gets a lot bigger. And so in that way, I've just started to come down from that dark place as well. Because, I'm kind of young, but I'm very blessed. My parents are also fixers as well. Like Peggy says, I have a lot of blessings and I know full well of like how much I could be throwing away. And back then I would do that anyway, and then I'd wake up the next day and everything would be fine. I'm just like, well, like what was the point of any of that? And I think with risks in a positive way, I definitely can't stay in the same place, mentally or physically at one time either. But for a music teacher, that can be a good thing, because with a kid between like 4 and 7 years old, they go in, they have no idea what to expect. And when you walk in and then you see this teacher and he's already kind of just bouncing from here to there because he like left some papers over here, he like dropped some music over there, and he's got to pick up some notes, it can be a little bit intriguing, and they can kind of like get a little bit less self-absorbed and be a little bit more like open to, okay, once this guy has his stuff figured out, like what's he going to say? What songs are we going to do? And every single week is different. And, as a guy that just thinks that I am a big kid already, it's all just fun and games, like every single time. There's no this has to get done or this has to be right, or you're not doing it this way, is just out the window.
Yeah. Well, and I imagine with you as a teacher, one of the advantages to having the ability to change on a dime, to be able to flip the script, is useful when you're working with individuals and you recognize this one needs something different than the other one. And so you're able to flex. Is that true for you? Are you able to flex pretty easily from child to child?
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, when a kid starts crying, you can't just be like, all right, everyone, keep doing your scale. It's like, okay, time to spin around and do some jumping jacks,
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I would love to hear a little more on the high side. So I really appreciate how vulnerable you've all been as far as that hard part of the cost that's come with some of that pushing the envelope or needing to move on to the next thing. But, Christian, you brought up one of the high sides, and I would love to hear from Peggy, Aaron, Joel. Like, what is a high side you see from that energy?
I can really speak to that. You just made me think of it. Again, kind of going back to my social work career, when I was actually in the field, I was such an out of the box thinker that, someone would want to go to rehab. And of course, the cognitive dissonance around being a social worker that drinks, working with people that drink is another podcast, right? So quickly, we had a dad who kept driving down Market Street after getting out of rehab and using again. So I just, I said, go home, think about what you could be doing, because your boys love you more than anything on the planet. And I don't want to see you lose your boys. And he came back and said, this is really off the wall, but what if I go to CrossFit for 30 days and I drug test every day for 30 days? And if I do really well at CrossFit, then the boys can come and join me at CrossFit. And damned if that didn't work. So, I told him, I said, I'm in a small town. I'm going to go to bat for you, but you better not let me down. You better be successful because I want to be able to do this for someone else.
That's good.
So I think my out of the box thinking has really made a difference in social work, because I don't go the same way other people do. And
Yeah.
they think I'm crazy sometimes, but I've been more successful than a lot of other social workers because of it.
That's beautiful. Very nice.
I love
What about
it.
you, Erin?
Honestly, I think I'm just down for anything. I think all my mom friends are like, your boys are so lucky because you'll just do whatever, like I just go with the flow. We're outside the majority of the day. I'm not super rigid. I'm very flexible. I hate actually being confined of any sort. So it's like, I will jump out of a plane tomorrow if the opportunity presents itself. I'm like kind of always down for the next adventure. And I like am very future focused. I'm always planning my next adventure as well. I can't stay in the same place. So I think also like whenever I went into the working world, I was like, am I just lazy that I can't work a 9 to 5? Like, what is wrong with me? I literally thought I was like, there was something wrong with me.
Totally.
And then finally I realized, oh my God, this is just who I am. Like, I need that flexibility.
I'm so glad you realized that at your age, my friend, because I have battled with that, all my life as well. And I hear that from other sexual sevens. They feel irresponsible. They feel like,
Yeah.
why is it that I can't work like other people and do what they do? And it's like both a desire to not do that. And at the same time, a sense of like, I should, and why can't I? And so, yeah.
No, yeah. Like literally my dad like made a joke in my speech at my wedding, like this year she's going to get a job. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm mortified. But finally I'm realizing like, I'm just not made out for the 9 to 5. Like I want to work and help people. And I also have my social work degree. I forgot that, but right now I'm social workers. I'm just like, I can't, that is just so stifling for me. So stifling.
Yeah, that freedom allows for some of that creativity that the sexual 7 is really good at. I'd love to hear from each of you about this second category, this broadcasting and attraction. The sexual instinct has this ability to like send the vibes out, and pull others in. It draws. There's an energy exchange that you have that's so good at. How does this show up in regards to your 7?
For me, I think my family has always said people are just drawn to you. I think I'm very easy to talk to, and I really don't do small talk. So it's like, come to me, I'll give you something and I'll be your listening ear. It's all of my relationships. Like I don't have a lot of friends, but I have a lot of really good ones. Yeah. And I'm definitely charismatic. I use my hands a lot.
I've said they're drawn to me as well. And I didn't really understand it for the longest time. And especially for someone who doesn't really like small talk either, they'll just come up to me and then try to like do some small talk. I'm just like, why are you talking to me? And well, and I don't say that because I'm not that mean, but with like the charisma and the charm thing, I am a firm believer in making anyone feel okay with anything that they have to say, or anything that they would like to say.
A lot of nods going on that one. Yes.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah, because that just unrestrainedness, it's a mutual freeing.
Yes.
And it's mutually empowering. And one of my favorite things to do ever is to just make a total fool out of myself. Or just like say something absolutely ridiculous. I remember going in when I was in high school, just grabbing a hall pass and then just going into another classroom being like, "Hi, Mrs. Cranes, how you doing? Any good movies today?" And everyone just looking at me like, "What are you doing?" Or like every first class in college ever, it's just like, "Hey, name 3 things about you and like why you chose this degree." And every single time I would just go into my life story. It'd be like this little joke where I'd like just block out 20 minutes just for me, everybody. and my friends loved it, and everyone else was weirded out for sure. But I look back on some of my like finest moments. I'm putting quote fingers in the air. My finest moments, and it's just times where I've just really been able to just break the ice.
Wow.
Yeah, this is
Everything you just said, it's, oh my gosh. Yes. I've done all of that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Oh
me
my-
too. What's so interesting is that I'm 68 years old, right? So seeing you two is just, it's like watching me all over again. I mean, I got straight A's in school, and my mom said, can you just please once not get needs to practice self-control marked on your report card? Just, I don't care if you get a B, but don't get needs to practice self-control on your report card. And I think all my life, and I think I was going to grow out of it. You guys will not grow out of it. I guarantee you're not going to grow out of it. Is that, you know, I think if anybody said, name 3 things about Peggy, one of them would be random. I'm the most random person on the planet, but also kind of make fun of myself, you know, kind of that self-deprivation thing. And, you know, I have to be careful about that a little bit, because I can go a little bit too far with that. That's the negative side of it. But I can connect with somebody through Zoom. I can connect through Zoom, and I cried when I found out I had to do Zoom teaching. Like I literally cried, and I said I was going to quit. But I'm so glad I hung in there, because I can read people, and that's, you know, the other side of the instincts. But yeah,
I resonate with that, Peggy, because that is one of the discoveries I think that a lot of us make as we grow and transform, is that the ability to make that connection, that ability to put ourselves out there and then have people respond to it, is not limited by, you know, by some of the circumstances in our lives. Sometimes we feel like we really push and put a lot of energy into it, and we don't. Sometimes it's just a little bit of energy in that field, and we're surprised by how people do respond to us. Mm-hmm. For me, broadcasting is, when I first saw that, I thought that's probably my weakest, because I didn't see myself kind of wanting to put myself out in the world and say, look at me, look at me. But then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, I see it in the small ways. I see it a lot in the small ways, in the way, like if I do something, you know, if I'm playing drums or if I'm doing pull-ups or something like that, and someone looks over, I'm like, oh yeah, keep looking, watch what I can do. But I don't want to make it obvious. I want it to be like, I didn't even notice that you're looking at me. I want to have that feel to it. So that's like constant too. That's the embarrassing thing about it. So I'm really saying something that I don't wish that I'm probably going to feel vulnerability hangover later. But that has been a constant since I was a kid, and I can see that. So that, in that sense, yes, I'm throwing the fish out, you know, the fishing line out into the water for sure.
I used to think I was like very conceited for when someone, like I catch someone watching me do something like playing the piano or just like standing there, that I felt like I had to do something.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this third component, this immersion and fusion, the ability to connect to someone in a deep way, to like fuse with, it can be another person, and it often is, but it can also be like a passion project and activity, something you go all the way in on, just getting completely connected to the energy of that. Joel, you and I have talked about, like, this is one of the reasons that you're a good coach, is because you really go into this fusion immersion with someone when you're with your coaching. You can connect with them really deeply. So if you can kick us off, then I want to hear from everyone as far as how does this immersion fusion show up through the 7?
Yeah. The immersion fusion is, I think when you said it's both a person and an idea, I think that's so true for a lot of people, and I think a lot of different types, but I can say for sure for the 7, like for me, I can get soaked into an idea and it becomes all consuming. And in fact, that's how I prefer to do things, is by immersion. So like when I went for my certification, I was the only student who went there and stayed all 3 weeks to get the entire 5 intensives done. And everybody else said, that's crazy. No one does this. Mm-hmm. But said I have to, because it's by my immersion. I didn't even know it at the time, but it's by being completely soaked in it that I actually do my best. That's how I absorb it. I couldn't even tell you what I was learning. If someone said, what did you learn? Well, there was a few ideas that were really interesting to me, but exactly what I learned, I couldn't tell you. But I knew and I trusted my process of immersion and soaking in that eventually all of it would make sense and connect. And that's just how I do it. I immerse myself with people. And if I'm around you long enough, I'll figure you out. I'll understand who you are. So it was so insightful to see. That's how I do everything. It's the immersion. If I'm interested in it, it's the immersion that then allows me to understand it better and to feel connected to it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Whenever I find something that really works for me, I'm all in. Like, I need to know everything. So it's just like, I can't, there's too much information and not enough time, but I want it all. And I talk about my family a lot, but my sister's always like, oh my God, you're always reading a new book and doing a new thing. And I have no desire to do any of that. And I'm like, I don't know. It's just, if I'm not growing, if I'm stagnant, I get so bored. And that's like, such a not good place for me. I just end up acting out in other ways, which are not healthy. So a little bit about me is, so I did get sober at 22, but once I had children, I started drinking again. And I think a lot of that was because I was so lost in motherhood in a way that I lost who I was. And I just felt like I wasn't growing at all. And so to stop the head from like just going in those circles of, I'm not doing enough of my work, like I'm at home all day. I am a little stifled at home all day. I'm taking care of others. It was my way of numbing out, turning off for the day. But now as I move forward, I'm realizing like healthier coping skills. Like, I do yoga and meditate every day. And that's the only way I can stay balanced. And if I don't, it's very obvious. But for immersion and fusion, like what energizes me is like that one-to-one contact, that one-to-one deep conversation. I have a lot of, I would say, close friendships where we go deep. I think like the first sentence that comes out of my mouth when I have a new friend is, I don't do small talk. So if you like, let's just cut to the chase. And some people stay and some people, but I usually can feel them out and be like, okay, they don't want to do small talk either.
You guys are speaking my language for sure. I mean, I hate small talk so much. I drank at it. There's nothing worse than small talk to me. And so it even led to some pre-drinking because I'm like, I don't want to go to this stupid party and have small talk. Everyone's told me all my life how social I am, but I don't like big crowds. I hate them. I can't stand them. So I get really excited. I have to be really careful about empathy versus compassion.
Yeah.
Because I can get too empathetic. I can get too involved in someone else. And that's the work I've done over the past few years, is really move towards the compassion part, holding people without judgment, but not giving too much of myself to them. Yeah, I do it with hands too, Aaron. But I get so geeked out my best friend and I have these nights where we'll talk for hours. My husband's just dumbfounded. And it's such deep conversation. And then we get so excited. She reads a book on trauma. I read a book on trauma. And then we're like, oh my God, we have to like talk about the 2 books we just read on trauma. So any brain science, any trauma, or I do a lot of coaching with new social workers. And I just feel like I can do so much with a new social worker that doesn't have all the bias yet. Right. So I'm kind of relentless. So yeah, it's just, you could tell I just get so excited about being part of someone else. I really do.
I think I'm so glad you brought up the other side of it, which is that you can end up being caught up in relationships and not know how to stop. It's an energetic exchange that happens in the sexual instinct. That's wonderful, right? There's this, like, that's the reason why you can go an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours in a conversation without a problem. If it's interesting, if it's life-giving, if there's that connection, that sizzle, that vibrancy, if that's happening, hey man, let's go, because you lose all sense of time and you're in this, like, feeling them, they're feeling you. the low side, totally. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's happened to me countless of times where I get caught up in a relationship and I'm carrying too much. I start picking up on too much of their struggle, their negativity, their whatever's going on in their world. And then I'm caught in that. And then also not knowing how to have boundaries around how much is too much of this connection with another person. So,
well, like what you just said and what Paige just said, it's that losing the objective distance where you can be an observer, because you're not an observer at that point. You're an engaged. No. You're completely enwrapped. And the same thing with your empathy and compassion picture, Peggy. Like, that's so true. It's like learning that you need to actually have a little bit of that objective distance to be able to speak to that. So, no, that's a really good point you both brought up. I really appreciate that. What about you, Christian? Talk about this immersion fusion piece.
Definitely relate with all of you guys, especially the swimming analogy is really good, or the soaking analogy is really, really good. The way that I get into bands is I don't listen to just one of the songs. I listen to every single one of their songs by all their records, and I play them on repeat for weeks and months. And that's how I know I'm a fan of that band. Sometimes it'll happen with some bands, and sometimes it won't. And then, like, I'll do a lot of reading, like Aaron does. Like, I'll read up on the biography of not just the lead singer, not just the songwriter, but like the banjoist, on the side. And I pretend that I'm in that band. Yeah, it's really funny. And I thought that...
Oh, you are in that band. And you put on the record and you play along too?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
You are
the next. Yeah. The next thing is I got to send an audition tape of me with the green screen with their footage.
There you go. Nice.
But, I actually resonated with Aaron a little bit about, like, kind of just with the boredom, because I think what I realized that depressed me really badly was that nothing lasts. And so, like, for whatever, like, high you get from, like, the union of being so engrossed in something, or like so engrossed with the relationship, like, it always just ends, and then you're always kind of left wanting more. And I thought that, like, maybe my desires are just disordered. Then maybe I should just stop trying to, like, fuse or immerse myself in things. And I didn't know I was doing that at the time. I didn't know those words, but I just stopped doing that. And it was so boring.
Right.
It was, and it's now just becoming clearer to me that it is one of the things that does give me life,
Yeah. And I can hear the pain when you talk about that, because it was an attempt to cut off a part of yourself that's so core to you that you can't do that, but that you also felt the pain of what the low side of that has cost you. But through this process, you're growing into using that high side of that immersion to use it for enjoyment, for pleasure, that exchange, that energetic thing, without it, like, pulling you completely out of the holistic, inclusive aspect of your identity.
Do you hear, though, that connection between that instinct and the fear of the seven?
Yes.
Which is the fear of the seven is deprivation. I will be without. And the sexual energy then it brings that need, that fear of deprivation, not in the self-preservational realm, but in the connection to other people realm. And so there's this, like, I've got to have this connection. And when you do, your heart gets into it. This is the reason why what you just described sounds very four-ish. And other fours who are listening would connect to this. And people who are listening might say, well, that sounds like a four. Yeah, absolutely. Because that's the heart that the seven has. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because of that connection between the deprivation, fear of deprivation, and the sexual energy, particularly the fusing piece.
Yeah. That's really good. Well, let's talk about your neutral instincts. So you have your dominant, which is sexual, and then you have your neutral or your secondary, however you want to refer to that. We usually refer to it as your more neutral instinct. What is your secondary instinct in your sequence, and how do you use it? Does it show up to serve the sexual? Does it serve you in some other way? But just share about what's your relationship. We've been talking more that way. Your relationship to your neutral instinct.
my second one is self-pres. So I think I am pretty high. It was pretty high in it, but for me, financial resources, I live in an abundance mindset that it's all going to fall right where it needs to. My husband does not feel that way at all. I think I'm a bit of a dreamer. Well, I feel like a dreamer to a lot of people. Like, I live in Fort Lauderdale. We've had actually a good amount of hurricanes coming through, and people go in crazy mode, like need all the resources, and then COVID. But I didn't. I was like, I got enough toilet paper. If I don't know. It wasn't a thing for me. But I definitely, I want a cozy home. I get really frustrated that I can't keep my home as clean as other self-preservational people. If I'm being completely honest, that's the most irritating thing for me. But yeah, I think I'm pretty high overall. But I think it's probably kicked in recently, like becoming a mom. You just kind of start being that way. But I was not. I was the messy kid throughout my childhood, completely.
Yeah, mine is the social instinct. I think that means you can take it or leave it. And if you could take it or leave it, I've definitely done a lot of taking. I've definitely done a lot of leaving as well. And I love, obviously, to make people laugh. The more people that I can make laugh, the better it feels. I think it's really important, like when I was in the band, to develop a good social kind of mentality, something that kind of looks out for the better of the group. And I definitely was able to use the one-on-one, the connection, the fusion to kind of bolster the social group, because, I think because I'm not as good at navigating the whole group as I am one-on-one. So if there's an argument and I get kind of frustrated, I can't really communicate the way I want to with each specific person. So I have to split off and do a one-on-one with each person, and then be like, this is where I'm coming from, and I'm telling you in the way that I know that you'll be able to resonate with me with, and then I'll go off and do the same thing with each other person, and then we come back and then we have a little bit of a better understanding. At times, especially during COVID times, it's taken a lot more effort, it feels like to me, to reach out and do stuff, because it just feels like if I'm not reaching out, then nothing's getting done. So I've spent a lot of time just by myself this past year, and it's been really hard, and it's really affected, just I didn't really realize how important it was informing why do I do what I want to do. And I think other people have a lot to do with that.
Yeah. And I like that example of the band, because that was using the social to serve the need for the sexual. So you have the performance, it's the energy exchange, you're putting yourself out there, and you're using that to, have one-on-one conversations with different bandmates to have that connection and solve problems in that regard. So yeah, that's a good example. I appreciate that. What about you, Peggy and Joel?
I just was amazed with Christian. It's exactly what I do as a teacher. I teach to the group, and I use a lot of humor because the subject I teach is so dark sometimes. But then I'm always aware of the people that are on the edge that I need to check in with to make sure they're okay. If someone said, again, to describe me as other than random, it's authentic, because I'm very aware of each individual in the whole group. I'm always doing that, to really sometimes to the point where I almost make myself sick. And I have to, when I teach, I put 150% into teaching, and then I have to go home and I don't want to talk to anyone. I just want to be by myself and plug myself into a battery, because I'm completely depleted, completely.
What's your second?
Definitely social. It's definitely social, and I can use it. Yeah, I can use it, but I use the social to get me to the individual.
Yeah. Same here. So mine's social as well, and for me, I describe it as that's the playground. If I'm,
I like that.
that's the sort of canvas or context for me to do this connection piece, So yes, when it comes to using it, that's how I use it. I use it for that purpose. But if I have to do a lot of sort of higher level social stuff, like reading and interpreting, bonding and affiliating, contributing, looking to see how others are contributing, that's tiresome. What I noticed, and I started seeing this, and I didn't like it in me. And I think other sevens have even other sevens I know who have actually gotten, caught up in drinking. It was because they didn't like the part of themselves at parties. It wasn't as social, wasn't as capable of doing all of the people meeting with everybody all the time. And so they drank to do so. I totally get that, because I found myself, even though alcohol wasn't my vice, I found myself actually drinking a little bit more. And as soon as I started to relax, then I could do a little bit more of the social engagement, because the natural flow of the sexual energy for me is much more of the one-on-one. If there's like a group and they're all interacting with each other and me, that's a lot on my brain. It takes a lot more energy for me to actually pay attention to that in the group dynamic. So that's how it shows up for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. The way you just described that, our dominant instinct, it really does function almost automatically. And then our secondary, it, as far as its effect on us, is more neutral, but it still requires more energy than the dominant. And then the repressed or the neglected, lately I've been using even the term resisted. That last one requires the most energy, the most intention in order to actually move forward, because we almost have a pulling or a reaction against it, or it's something we just sort of ignore. So what is your neglected or your repressed or your resisted instinct? And what is your relationship to that instinct?
Is self-preservation, and my relationship to it has just been long since it's just been one of defeat, complete defeat. I mean, I grew up well cared for and still am to this day, even though I live by myself. Well, I have a roommate. He's an 8, sexual 8. So, but he's very home me. So it's nice for me that he does all the dishes and cleans the house all the time. And I'm just like, I know that in these next 15 days, I will not have time to clean my room, nor will I have the will or willpower to do so. And my room's been the way it is for like 13 days now, and I think it's pretty clean. So yeah, and with like planning and all that stuff, it's almost like an inside joke with me at this point, where it's just like, yeah, it's so obvious that it's something that I know I need to work on, that I've tried and it has failed. COVID's been better for that sense, because it's made me kind of like do a routine. So now I actually have a routine where I wake up when it gets light out. I go downstairs, I make my own coffee, and I sit down, and then I just pretend that I'm normal. And then after, yeah. Like maybe read the news, maybe plan my day out, and I'm like, this is actually pretty cool. And then after 15 minutes, I go insane.
That's awesome.
Oh man, you cracked us all up. I know. Aaron's crying there, cracking up. Well, that was the other question, is like you hinted at there, like also how are you growing through the instinct? That was the other part I forgot.
I haven't like totally given up, I guess, I should say, but yeah, just being able to just see like, what am I willing to do? And then just kind of negotiate that. Okay, maybe you could pick up one thing today. Maybe you can just plan something for once and do that every single day. And when I'm on a good roll, it really does free me up. It unclutters the mind as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And it does make me feel like I'm a bit freer to be me, ironically. Because I just thought that like, oh man, you'd have to be so conceited to sit down and write out a budget. But you just do it. You do it like once and you don't have to worry about it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you said something that's so important, where we resist our lowest instinct a lot of times because we think it'll make us less of ourselves. Yeah. But you just said it like actually provides more freedom. It frees up space. It gives you a little bit more clarity. So and the terms you used is you're basically saying by dialing up my self-pres, I'm serving my 7 because I have more freedom and there's a little bit more space. No, so that was really well said. I appreciate that. We only have one who is the lowest of social, but we've got 2 more who are low in the self-pres. So I want to hear from you 2 who are low in self-pres as far as, how are you growing through it and what's your relationship to that instinct?
So mine is definitely self-preservation. And again, we were talking a little bit before the show that I married somebody who is a self-preservation. So he, for a long time, he took care of that for me, right? Spreadsheets are foreplay for him. So I just, I have to say, oh, honey, that's the most beautiful spreadsheet I've ever seen in my life, right? And then I can have anything I want. So
that's awesome.
I wish everyone could see the facial expressions this has caused in the Zoom room. Erin is loving that.
So my eyes literally roll back in my head when Paul starts talking budget. I mean, I don't care how he does it. And I really do have to stop and say that every once in a while because he's this close to putting our budget on television screen and having me watch it that way with one of those highlighter things, those laser beam thingies. So I used to be terrible with money. I used to be terrible with sleep. My drinking caused like this crazy, I couldn't sleep ever. And I spent thousands of dollars on sleep. I did everything possibly except quit drinking. Because then when I quit drinking, I started sleeping. The work made me do the non-negotiable routines. Like I journal, I write, I walk, I breathe. I change the freaking oil in my car.
Nice.
Right?
Impressive.
And so all of that has given me like 33% more life. Like Christian's right. Paying attention to my self-preservation, which I don't think I ever have in my entire life, is like the most freedom I've ever had in my entire life. Ever. So
yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, oh man, I so relate with you. I so relate with Christian. I'm dying laughing because I see that over and over. I mean, even the idea of like a spreadsheet. I mean, all of that stuff has always been a problem, and my resistance was quite high in that space. And yet I have a very interesting history of having dived deeply into self-preservational things. For example, construction while I was in college and being in that world, but I never felt like an insider ever. I always knew I was definitely on the outside of that everybody else understood. No matter how hard I worked, and I worked hard at trying to be good at it, I was just barely average. And that's as far as I got with it. But it was always a point of just resistance and pain, and felt inadequate in many regards. I felt inadequate around making money. I felt inadequate around, taking care of the home, the house. And so that inadequacy just made it feel even worse. So that's the reason why I avoided it all the more. It was like every time, even if I touch it, I'm not good at it. So that was a lot of my life. And then in the recent year, I've been practicing a lot more self-preservation. I've welcomed it back and started doing some of it. And it does create, I love the way you put it, Christian. I think it's so right on. It creates space. I like that. I'm thinking even in terms of the content, the idea of how do we talk about self-preservation, it is that space maker. It's like this organizer, and then it allows the other parts to flow better. Definitely feels that way for me as well. And I actually find myself taking breaks from my overdoing the sexual energy. If I've had a week of just nonstop conversations with people, social be my second. It just keeps that going. If your self-pres is the second to it, it kind of slows that down a little bit, but not for me, it just keeps it going. And then I gas out. And then it's just like, I just want to do something physical. I just want to do something where I just go for a walk, or even just doing dishes feels very like, dialing down, being able to breathe again.
Well, Erin, you're the odd one out here with social as the neglected. Talk about your relationship to social and how are you growing through it? And
social. So I think groups just overwhelm me. I'm such a more one-to-one person. And I actually realized that when I was working in social work, and I worked at a substance abuse treatment center, and one-on-one with people, I was right on connecting. And then when I would run groups, the anxiety before, this is growth right here, doing this, but like and just practicing, I think putting myself in those situations where I can, you doing it scared, but it's not that I couldn't read. Like I could tell if people, that upset that person. I couldn't like micromanage it all. I couldn't deal with all the personalities and the dynamics of the group. And I would just come out super drained.
Yeah. Is it because you're trying to have that level of connection you're used to in the one-to-one arena with like each of the people in the group, and you're trying to shifting between them and trying to keep up with that much data?
I think I'm so in my head, a lot of it. And it's just like so much coming at me. And it's also, I'm trying to observe so much. And then it's also a lot of it is super negative, which is super draining as well for me. So that's why I've kind of realized, I think moving forward, I want to be more of a coach rather than a therapist, because it's a little more goal oriented for me.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes can't handle the dark, which I don't know. That would be growth too. But if I'm being honest.
Good. Yeah. That's great for you to be able to see that. And it's not like the goal is for you to be around pain nonstop and to be wallowing in it and be, that's not the goal. The goal is, how do I stay present long enough and then bring in the gift of the 7, which is to help people to see things differently, to help people grow and transform. Like in our work, there's no way that I could be somebody who meets with people week after week or month after month without any transformation, change, and growth. Right? Peggy, you're nodding your head. It's like, that would be death to my soul. Like I need to see transformation, growth, progress. That's the 7. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing.
I know. And I always thought, like, am I being selfish? Like I can't stay in it with them, but this has helped me realize like, that's just who I am. And that's why that sometimes really hard stuff that's just not my place to be. It's not someone else's. And I'm a massive reframer. Like, I think people call me for that, okay, this is what's going on. And I can always find the light in it. Right. But I always am kind of pulling myself back, being like, is this toxic positivity? Like, like if someone's just sharing to share, I can be a listening ear and I don't have to reframe all the time as well for people. Yeah.
And for all the 7s, this is so important. What you want to grow towards is being less afraid of the dark and not letting that be the reason why you're always reframing. It's just becoming aware of the times where that happens. It's not about trying to navel gaze too much. We're not asking that. We're just saying when you become aware that this is driving, that's what's running the show for you. It's like, I'm afraid of the dark. Therefore, I can't have any of these conversations. Therefore, I always have to reframe and spin. And to more of I'm getting comfortable enough with the dark. However, we don't need to stay there. We don't need to stay forever in the darkness. We can also move towards the light. That's the growth edge for the 7. And when you do that, it is incredibly effective in the lives of people around you. But it makes sense for you in terms of the social sphere, why it's exhausting for you and why it's difficult, because of the way you described it. I think you did an excellent job of describing what's happening. And it sounds like the self-pres instinct, which is your 2nd, is helping you, is that protecting you. Like, let's not do too much of that because that'll wear you out.
No, I've actually gotten really good at boundaries and just kind of giving myself permission to say, like, I'm not going to listen to that today, and just being aware and telling other people to set boundaries and then telling them the boundary as well. You can say, like, I'm not ready for this information right now. I'm not in the right headspace. And that's okay.
That's good. Yeah.
That's a great line.
Not to mention, because that's what I'm learning to do and this is where the intelligences are brilliant around our instincts, is like they really have a brilliance to them, and having that as your 2nd has protected you. Whereas for those of us who are sexual first, social second, not so much. That's what we have to grow into. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, thank you all so much. You have really added to definitely my knowledge of the Sexual Seven, but how you nuanced it, even in the stack, like this is just endlessly deep. And we always say that we are not putting anyone in a box. Like this is your starting point. This is not your landing place. This is your launch pad. And to see how you've been moving from here and growing from there is really a gift for people to listen to and for other Sexual Sevens to learn from you in what you shared today. So we are so thankful. This has been just an incredible season. And we are thankful for the gift that you have given in sharing yourself, sharing your own story, because your story will help guide others. It'll be a light to others. So you've brought all of yourself. You've brought the fun and the joy and the laughter of your type, but you've also brought the darkness that you've had to face. And so that too is a gift, and a gift to us in this space. So thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, and we will talk to you soon. Bye. So thank you so much for joining us today and through this series. And make sure you sign up for our Live Instincts event on Wednesday, May 19th, as we start to look at what do we do with this now? How do we grow through this? Because information is not transformation. We want to take this information and use it to help create practical transformation in our lives. And we look forward to doing that journey with you and being a part of it. Make sure you are subscribed so you see the new episodes pop up whenever they come out. If you leave us a review on iTunes, it really helps people discover the show. It really helps the algorithm that points people towards this work. You can follow us on Instagram at Art of Growth and contact us about all of our work at www.theartofgrowth.org. But for now, my friends, may the joy of connection be a rich experience within you. May you know and be a part of the magic of life. May you be a spark and a fire that points to the beauty and wonder of life. And may you experience safe intimacy that leaves you in awe of this life. Grace and peace today, my friends.